Welcome in, everybody. Let's dive right into it. Now, we have a lot of massively popular franchises floating around, entertaining us off and on throughout any given year. We have the Marvel Cinematic Universe, Star Wars, the Blizzard properties. Mostly just World of Warcraft now, though. We have Warhammer 40,000, Star Trek, the DC Animated Universe. We've got some pretty heavy-hitting franchises out there that are fairly cemented in the general culture. We're kind of expecting them to stick around, let's say. Now, these are franchises that are not going away anytime soon. They're certainly not slowing down. They're not stopping their production of content in their variety of forms of media, like webcomics, novels, cartoons, movies, TV shows, one-off movies or miniseries. Hell, even the parodies that you find throughout YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, even the forms of content making fun of all of those franchises, that keeps the lifeblood and the energy around those franchises very invigorated, keeps them alive. All these mediums are being utilized quite well, in my opinion, by all of the major players out there, all the big names. So something that can be said about all these is that they are quote-unquote too big to fail, meaning that they all have such a deep war chest. They're backed by so many major studios and companies or individual actors. Their fan bases, they span just all over the world. There is always newly minted content to be milked and expanded on. And it's become inconceivable that these big names will peter out and die like so many other franchises have in our recent past. Now, does this mean that these bigger names 100% cannot die and go away? No, of course not. But just how much has to go wrong for that to happen? How many terrible decisions need to happen? How many failures need to be made before one of these big names actually dies and stops producing? Meaning there's absolutely no studio or even individual or independent will remaining in order for new content to be made whatsoever. So even the parodies go by the way of the dinosaur here. Now, some good examples of this are Firefly and Stargate. Unfortunately, both of these were amazing and incredibly beloved, but everything necessary to their continuation either died out, withered away. There were some changing of hands at MGM or Fox Studios. Some new execs came in, new showrunners, new producers, different money, and things like that just absolutely tanked these franchises, as opposed to the couple of dozen new showrunners, producers, directors that just go through the revolving door that is any of Disney Studios, DC Animated, Warner Brothers, Blizzard, Capcom, all those good boys, right? We've got a lot of people coming in, leaving, lots of different visions filtering through. So what that translates to mean is that the franchises like Stargate and Firefly, they could not weather those kinds of things happening. But franchises that are quote-unquote too big to fail, they certainly can. If not even worse than that. That's how they survive and continue on. Now, the same thing happened to just about every Sci-Fi Channel original show, to the point where the channel is now just a relic of its former self. It's just this husk of what used to be a lot of great ideas and talent, marketability. I think everyone knows Sharknado nowadays, the Sharknado movies, and just how absolutely ridiculous and silly they were. Well, we can thank Sci-Fi Channel for that. I mean, they're only putting out original content like Resident Alien maybe once every few years. I mean, this was a channel that put out original content almost every quarter of each year. So, to say the least, Sci-Fi Channel definitely doesn't fit the bill when it comes to being too big to fail. Unfortunately, because I think it could have been quite amazing for a lot longer than it was. Though I highly recommend going and reading up on the history of the Sci-Fi Channel. It's pretty inspiring. It's pretty fascinating what was able to be accomplished. I applaud the vision. It just turned into a shriveled shell of what it was supposed to be. It's very, very sad. So I think some great study can be done on the question of being too big to fail with the current runs of Disney's Lucasfilm, Paramount's Star Trek shows, Paramount's Halo TV, Amazon Prime's Lord of the Rings, Rings of Power, Fallout, The Boys. Now, needless to say, the most obvious franchise that's having the most issues at the moment is Star Wars. Now, objectively, most of their original shows are straight up failures. Kenobi, Book of Boba Fett, and now The Acolyte. Just to kind of focus on the biggest failures that they've had, they all have something that everything else that's currently failing have in common. They were over-budgeted. Their writers and directors are either actively not paying attention to the long-established lore, even the folk lore, the legends material that these franchises have, or they acknowledge that it's there and they're choosing to just ignore the existing fan base love and the heavy connect that the fans have with everything that's already been established, whether it's canon or not. And they're saying, okay, no, it's our way or the highway with these fans, right? They're dismissing them out of hand altogether. But the thing these Star Wars shows have in common with everything that's failing, they're doing everything wrong. If it was just one or two things, then I imagine people, for the most part, could forgive or overlook. But man, it's a lot. It's failing miserably. And I emphasize the word failing because a show or a franchise, in this case Star Wars, it doesn't actually fail until it's dead, discontinued, canceled. It no longer has any breath of life whatsoever. That doesn't mean it's not still beloved. That doesn't mean that it doesn't still have fans who rewatch it constantly, talk about it all the time, praise it as something great and memorable and a cultural touchstone. I mean, we still do that with Firefly, and it came out forever ago. But the difference is it failed. It failed for a enormous plethora of reasons, none of which were the show's fault in and of itself. But then we have Disney Star Wars, which is a franchise that is failing. And that's the whole point. These shows are not going to fail, but they are failing because so many of the fans are coming out against them. The merch is falling off. The company's stocks are being hit like a freight train. I think a month or two ago, Disney was at 110, 115 per share. Now it's down to 90 in a month. That's, if you know anything about stocks, that's a big red warning light going off, and it's pretty horrific. And that all of this is communication that a show is bad, by the way. None of this is happening with a show that is good, like The Boys and Gen V, House of the Dragon, The Bear. Anything that's coming out right now that is, like Firefly, beloved. You don't see any of this kind of thing happen around those shows. There's no hype being lost. There's no fans beating their chest at each other. There's no showrunner, director, executive coming out and bashing one part of the fan base and choosing to kind of protect or laud another part of the fan base as the quote-unquote true fans. But the point of it all is that the companies that are producing these shows, the producers, the showrunners, the writers, directors, they all have far too much monetary support and corporate infrastructure behind them that keeps them afloat. So no matter how bad the shows are, they won't get canceled. They won't fail. Because the people that are creating these horrific trash heaps, they do not care that they are trash. All of these people are so full of themselves, and they only care about putting out what they want. The fans be damned. And this really stuck in my mind whenever there was an interview done with, I think it was the director of the Halo TV show on Paramount. And he said, yeah, we wanted our writing team that didn't know the Halo games, hadn't played them. We weren't going to make them play the Halo games because we didn't want to assign homework and all of it. It was garbage, man. So what that tells me is these creatives, these creative leads, they're putting their vision, their view, their priority over what the fans want. And why? Why would you do that if you're not some self-important prick? Right? Why would you do that unless you were some holier-than-thou, high and mighty bullshitter? Now, one-off movies and shows, streaming projects like Netflix, Amazon Originals, those can be really great, like Love, Death, and Robots, Black Mirror. These are 100% original projects. Those shows are made by these same kind of people, right? But they're original projects. They had no pre-existing fan base. There is no established lore. There was nothing for anybody to muck up. So if those kind of people want to be creatives and give us a show or a movie or miniseries or whatever, pull them back and redirect those resources to Love, Death, Robots, Black Mirror, something like that, to where they can play around and they're in no danger of screwing up something that was already beloved by fans, and it is a lot less dangerous, right? It opens them up to a lot less scrutiny. And if those shows, projects, movies, if those fall on their ass, then that proves to us that these people are not worth the money that they're being paid. They're not worth the time and effort that fans are putting in to consume that media. But these 100% original projects, I mean, they can absolutely be made to be just free reign for these creative types, to where they can go in any direction they want and all that good stuff. But when you step into an already established universe, something that has been around for a long time, be it a game, a book series, comics, movies, there are some guardrails that you have to kind of stay within, some rules you have to follow. Now, if you don't do that, then you're probably breaking canon, you're disrespecting what's been established and what's loved by millions of people, you're putting your own vision above everybody else's that's come before you, and by extension, you're saying that your vision is more important than everybody else's. And for all of these failing shows, that's what they have in common. They're all being created and run by people like that. But they will never out and out fail because of the endless amount of support given to them through corporate interests, social media, troll farms, shill bloggers, and YouTubers. And that's why these people feel like they can just have carte blanche to overlook what the fans want, because they do have so much support. And they shouldn't. They shouldn't have all of that protection. Those super prideful and overly full of themselves showrunners need to be put in their place. Otherwise, we're not going to get the best kind of shows possible out of the beloved franchises that we've had for decades now. So, the quote-unquote too big to fail notion is sadly far too prevalent in today's big Hollywood projects. And Hollywood in general, really, but it's bleeding into streaming, comics, and all that good jazz as well. So I think probably a final nail in the coffin for Star Wars will have been The Acolyte. I think that a lot of excitement and energy is going to be shifted towards franchises built around popular games now, because we've had a lot of successes. We've had one or two massive failures. The last Resident Evil project, I think it was a Netflix original. I think it was where Wesker was really weird, and the main character was this girl living in this suburban area, and Umbrella Corp owned the suburb. It was weird, dude, but it was awful. So we've had failures like that, and of course Halo TV show. But we've also had successes. We've had Fallout, The Last of Us, the Super Mario Brothers movie. I think we're going to get a Fallout show. I think it's going to be a show. So my prediction came true. We are now seeing this huge pivot to movies and shows based around very popular games. And so far, I think we're hitting a 7 out of 10. If you want to envision it as a ratio, that's a decent number. It's not great, but that's just because of what we have in terms of quantity of content instead of quality. Now, I've said this before, and I'll keep saying it because I want there to be a ton of excitement around it. But the project that I'm really focused in on and hopeful for right now is Game Workshop's Warhammer 40k show that has Henry Cavill involved in it. I think he's going to actually be a part of the cast, but I believe he's also involved in the production of it at whatever level. He might be using his star power as a bit of leverage to get the showrunners to do what he wants. And considering how big of an uber fan he is, I think that, you know, he'll use his powers for good. He was Superman, after all. Still is, I think. Now, we're getting really very little information on the Warhammer 40k show, but we do know that pre-planning and negotiations are in the works. You know, all of this is leading up to pre-production and casting. So hopefully, if it's Amazon that's producing it, which I'm pretty sure it is, hopefully we get the people involved in shows like The Boys, Fallout, and not the Rings of Power. Keep those people away from Amazon Studios with rusty spears and shields. Like I keep them away. So yeah, I'm hopeful because I think Cavill has a bit of a backbone and he's a loyal nerd. And you know, if it's a travesty, if it's a failure, Games Workshop, they're gonna take a nosedive. I think they cannot afford to be too big to fail. I don't think that they've failed up until now because they've mostly stuck to video games and books and their tabletop game, which has all been a wild success for decades now in the nerd community. Yeah, I think a failure on either the big screen or the home screen will tank their reputation with their fans, and they certainly will prove this kind of litmus test of being too big to fail to be accurate. But that is all the time I had for today, guys. Thank you so much for tuning back in, and stick around for more Sci-Fi Unchained. But for now, live long and prosper, my friends, and may the Force be with us all.